I thought I was just falling for my girlfriend, until her sister leaned close and whispered, "You've wanted this as much as I have." The weekend family gathering had begun with the usual warmth of casual laughter and clinking cutlery, but as soon as I stepped into the apartment, I felt a strange shift in the air. My girlfriend had insisted I come early to help her older sister with groceries, claiming it would save time. But the quiet anticipation that settled in me told a different story. Her sister, Emily, was standing near the doorway, graceful and composed, yet there was an undeniable softness in her posture as she greeted me. She was 40, confident, but not in a flashy way. Her presence was calm, measured, and magnetic. The sunlight filtering through the sheer curtains caught strands of her hair, giving her an almost ethereal glow, and I found myself momentarily distracted. We began unpacking the groceries together. My hands brushed against hers when we reached for the same bag, a fleeting contact that sent a subtle thrill down my spine. It was innocent, just the passing of fingertips, yet it lingered in a way that neither of us acknowledged aloud. Her fingers were warm, the skin soft and familiar in a strange, almost intimate way. I caught myself noticing the way her eyes crinkled slightly when she smiled at me, not the easy, playful smile she reserved for my girlfriend, but something quieter, more personal, as if she were sharing a secret only I could perceive. There was a rhythm to our movements, an unspoken synchronicity. She handed me a carton of eggs, our palms brushing once more, and I felt my heart pick up a beat I couldn't explain. I reminded myself that this was her sister, that I was here to be helpful, not intrusive. Still, the warmth of her presence lingered like a soft glow, filling the room more than the sunlight ever could. At one point, she leaned over slightly to reach the bag at the bottom of the pile, and the scent of her perfume, subtle, comforting, slightly floral, reached me. It was not overwhelming, but it clung to the air around her, creating a quiet intimacy in the mundane act of putting groceries away. I noticed the way her sleeve brushed against my arm and how I caught myself not pulling away immediately, my mind suddenly aware of every minor sensation, the warmth of her skin, the slight tremor in my fingers, the soft cadence of her laughter when I made a clumsy joke about carrying too many bags. We moved through the small apartment, unpacking, arranging, and talking lightly. The conversation was casual, but my senses were heightened. Every glance, every shared space felt charged with a subtle tension I didn't fully understand. Her eyes occasionally lingered a moment too long on mine, and I found myself returning the gaze, hesitating just slightly before looking away, feeling that quiet, mutual awareness. By the time my girlfriend arrived, bustling into the apartment with her usual energetic smile, the atmosphere had shifted. I was acutely aware of Emily beside me, the small closeness of our hands as we moved items across the kitchen, the quiet electricity that hung in the spaces between our words. It was the beginning of something unspoken, a connection that neither of us acknowledged, yet both of us felt, fluttering just beneath the surface of casual family life. Emotional goal, build curiosity, internal conflict, and subtle attraction. The audience senses the forbidden tension, forming, drawn into the nuanced dynamics of age, familiarity, and unspoken desire. After the initial flurry of groceries and introductions, the apartment settled into a quieter rhythm. The soft hum of an indie playlist filled the background, mingling with the occasional clatter of plates as Emily began organizing the kitchen. The warm glow of candlelight flickered on the countertops, casting gentle shadows that danced across her face. She moved with an effortless grace, the kind of confidence that comes from years of knowing yourself, yet there was a vulnerability in the way she occasionally paused, as if weighing her words or actions before committing to them. I found myself lingering near the counter, helping her arrange dishes, though the task itself felt secondary to simply being close. Our hands brushed as we reached for the same glass, and for a fleeting moment, either of us pulled away. Her gaze met mine, warm yet teasing, and she smirked ever so slightly. I returned the look, feeling a quiet thrill run through me. The air between us seemed charged, though nothing had yet been said aloud. The playful banter began naturally. She mocked my attempt to balance too many plates, exaggerating her horror with a theatrical gasp, and I responded with a mock bow of apology. Her laughter was soft but contagious, echoing in the room in a way that made my chest tighten slightly, not from humor alone, but from the intimacy of being the one she laughed with, rather than at. There was a subtle rhythm to our interaction, a dance of words and gestures that neither of us named, but both felt. At one point, my girlfriend excused herself to take a phone call, leaving the two of us alone. The shift in atmosphere was immediate. The space between us seemed smaller, charged in a way that made my pulse quicken. Emily leaned casually against the counter, her shoulder brushing mine just slightly. I felt the warmth of her body, subtle but unmistakable, and noticed the faint scent of her perfume lingering in the air, comforting, yet intimate. She looked at me, eyes softening, as if weighing whether to cross some invisible line. Our conversation took a more personal turn, though still light. She asked about my childhood, my studies, and the small passions I rarely shared with others. I listened, drawn to the way she tilted her head when she considered my answers, her fingers idly tracing the edge of a dish towel. There was a quiet attentiveness in her gestures, a subtle care that felt different from the casual warmth one shows a friend. I became aware of the small things, the cadence of her speech, the curve of her smile, the way she shifted closer when emphasizing a point. Every movement, every glance, carried a weight I couldn't ignore. When I left the kitchen briefly to fetch something, I noticed her watching me from the doorway. The expression on her face was unreadable at first, then softened into something that made my stomach twist, part curiosity, part longing. I caught myself stealing a glance back, feeling a magnetic pull toward her that both thrilled and frightened me. By the time my girlfriend returned, the moment was over, the air back to casual family chatter. Yet the subtle awareness remained, like an unspoken promise hanging between Emily and me. Every gesture, every glance from then on carried a hidden depth, a quiet tension that neither of us acknowledged aloud, but both of us felt. Emotional goal, deep in the emotional connection and mutual awareness. The audience senses the growing tension and forbidden attraction, while keeping the interaction innocent and YouTube safe. Subtle touches, shared laughter, and attentive observation create an intimate slow-burn dynamic that keeps viewers invested. Later that evening, the apartment had quieted. The city outside glimmered through the balcony doors, the fading hues of dusk painting everything in soft, muted gold. My girlfriend had retired to her room to rest, leaving Emily and me alone on the balcony. The gentle hum of distant traffic and the occasional chirp of a bird were the only sounds. It felt like the world had narrowed down to just the two of us. Emily leaned lightly against the railing, her profile illuminated by the fading sun. She seemed smaller in that quiet moment, a subtle vulnerability in the way she exhaled, her shoulders relaxing only when she thought no one was watching. I joined her, careful not to crowd the space but close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her side. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, and I sensed that this was more than just casual conversation. She started talking, softly at first, about the solitude she sometimes felt despite being surrounded by family and friends. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge of honesty that made my chest tighten. "People think I have it all figured out," she said, glancing at me briefly. "But most days, I just feel a little lost." Her hand traced a faint circle on the balcony railing, and I noticed the way her fingers trembled slightly as if sharing a secret. I listened, silent, letting her speak. There was something magnetic about the way she allowed herself to be vulnerable, the way her eyes softened when she looked at me. I wanted to say something reassuring, but I also didn't want to break the delicate thread of trust she was extending. Instead, I simply nodded, offering my presence as a quiet anchor. Then, without thinking, her hand brushed against mine while gesturing toward the city below. The contact was fleeting, almost accidental, yet the warmth of her skin seared through me. I felt a sudden awareness of my own heartbeat, of the closeness we shared in that moment. She didn't pull away, and neither did I. We remained like that for a heartbeat longer than seemed reasonable, caught in a suspended intimacy neither of us had verbalized. Her eyes met mine again, lingering, searching. There was a subtle invitation in the tilt of her head, a silent question I couldn't fully answer. I realized then how rare it was to meet someone who could both challenge and comfort you simultaneously. She had this quiet steadiness, yet beneath it, a yearning that mirrored my own, though neither of us had admitted it aloud. The sky darkened further, stars beginning to peek through the twilight. Emily let out a soft laugh, almost shy, almost embarrassed. "I don't usually say things like this," she admitted. "But I'm glad I can." The weight of her honesty hung in the air, delicate and profound. In that moment, I felt an emotional tether forming, a connection built not on attraction alone, but on trust, recognition, and the courage to be vulnerable. My hand hovered near hers, uncertain, and she didn't move away. There was a quiet intimacy in simply being there together, sharing the space and the vulnerability. The world outside the balcony ceased to exist, and for a brief while, it was just us, fragile and honest, suspended between hesitation and desire. Emotional goal, deepen emotional intimacy, show that attraction grows not just from physical tension, but from trust and vulnerability. The audience feels the connection intensifying, sensing the forbidden tension while remaining emotionally heartfelt and YouTube safe. The storm had started softly, a gentle drizzle that tapped against the windows, gradually growing into a rhythmic patter of rain. The living room was dimly lit, a single lamp casting a warm, golden glow across the furniture. Outside, thunder rumbled softly, punctuating the quiet hum of the rain. It was the kind of evening that demanded stillness, the perfect backdrop for moments that felt suspended in time. Emily and I were sitting on the couch, ostensibly watching a movie my girlfriend had suggested. But the film seemed almost secondary, a shared excuse for the closeness that had begun to settle between us. I noticed the way she adjusted her position, moving slightly closer, as if the couch itself had subtly shrunk. Her shoulder brushed mine in the process, light, almost accidental, but the warmth that spread through me was unmistakable. I became acutely aware of the small space between us, the soft curve of her arm, the quiet steadiness of her breathing. A sudden flash of lightning made her instinctively lean toward me. Her head brushed against my shoulder, and I froze for a heartbeat, feeling the heat of her hair against my neck. There was no panic, no rush, only the slow, exquisite awareness of another person's presence so near. The faint scent of her perfume, subtle and comforting, enveloped me. My own breath caught slightly, a quiet acknowledgement of the tension that had been building since our earlier encounters. I tried to focus on the movie, forcing my gaze to the screen, but the words and images blurred as I became aware of every small sensation: the warmth of her shoulder, the rhythm of her breathing, the faint brush of her hair against my chest. My hand hovered near hers, uncertain whether to rest it there or pull away. The moment was charged yet delicate, the kind of intimacy that could vanish if spoken aloud. Emily shifted slightly, sensing perhaps my hesitation, and smiled softly. There was an understanding in that smile, a subtle recognition of what neither of us dared to say. I felt my chest tighten, a mixture of exhilaration and restraint, aware that we were treading a line between curiosity and propriety. Her fingers brushed the edge of mine as she adjusted her position again, a fleeting touch that felt electric despite its subtlety. Time seemed to stretch. The storm outside created a cocoon of quiet and warmth, isolating us from the world beyond the apartment walls. There was a magnetic pull between us, unspoken and unacknowledged, yet palpable. I wanted to say something, anything, but the right words eluded me. Instead, I simply remained still, aware of the closeness, letting the moment unfold naturally. As the credits of the movie rolled, the spell was broken when the girlfriend called from her room, asking if we were ready for tea. Emily pulled back just slightly, and the tension ebbed, leaving a quiet ache in its wake. The moment had passed, but the memory lingered, a reminder that connection could exist in the smallest gestures, the briefest touches, and the shared silence between two people who were learning to notice each other. Emotional goal: heightened subtle romantic tension through physically charged but entirely appropriate contact. Show that intimacy is not only in words or gestures but in presence, shared space, and fleeting, accidental touches. The audience experiences the slow burn chemistry building naturally, keeping it YouTube safe yet emotionally gripping. The apartment was hushed that night, the soft hum of the city beyond the walls barely audible. My girlfriend had fallen asleep, leaving Emily and me in the hallway near the living room. The dim light from the corridor cast long, soft shadows, stretching across the polished floor, and I felt a strange quiet settle over us, one that made ordinary moments feel charged, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Emily leaned against the wall, her posture relaxed yet deliberate. She had that same quiet intensity from earlier, the way her gaze lingered just a moment too long, the faint curve of her lips that hinted at thoughts she didn't voice. I felt a magnetic pull toward her, one I knew I shouldn't indulge, yet couldn't entirely resist. The tension between us was palpable, a delicate, electrifying line that neither of us dared cross, though both were painfully aware of its existence. She stepped closer, almost imperceptibly, until our arms brushed. The contact was soft, seemingly accidental, yet it sent a rush of warmth through me, the kind that made my chest tighten and my mind whirl with unspoken thoughts. I felt the steady rhythm of her pulse beneath her sleeve, subtle and grounding, and it drew me closer, though my conscience whispered against the impulse. Then she spoke, so softly that it might have been the rustle of her breath against the wall. "You've wanted this as much as I have." The words were barely a whisper, but they resonated in the stillness of the hallway. My heart leapt, a mix of excitement and guilt coursing through me. The meaning was clear, yet the unspoken depth behind it, the years of her experience, the quiet longing, the careful restraint, made it heavier than any straightforward confession. I froze, unsure how to respond. My loyalty, my sense of what was right, clashed violently with the raw pull of desire and the undeniable intimacy we had been building. I wanted to say something, anything to bridge the tension, yet the right words escaped me. So I remained silent, allowing the moment to stretch, to breathe, as if in that suspension we could explore the edge of possibility without falling over it. Her hand brushed mine lightly, tentatively, testing boundaries. I felt the warmth of her skin, soft and real, and the subtle electricity of proximity. There was longing in her eyes, a quiet acknowledgement of mutual desire, yet it was tempered by the awareness of who we were, the sister of my girlfriend, a person I respected deeply. The collision of attraction and restraint was almost unbearable, yet it was exquisite in its intensity. We stood there, neither moving closer nor stepping back, suspended in a perfect balance between temptation and responsibility. Every breath, every heartbeat, every tiny gesture, the tilt of her head, the brief brush of her fingers, was magnified in the stillness, creating a slow-burn tension that pulsed like a quiet, relentless drum. Finally, she gave a faint, almost imperceptible nod and stepped back just enough to release the weight of the moment without breaking it entirely. The air between us was charged with something unspoken, something dangerous yet deeply human. We had glimpsed the edge of desire, recognized it, and stepped back, for now. Emotional goal, peak emotional tension through whispered confession and forbidden attraction. Highlight the inner conflict between desire and morality. The audience experiences the thrilling push and pull of slow burn romance, feeling the intensity without crossing into explicit territory. The next morning, the city was bathed in the soft glow of sunrise, spilling golden light across the rooftop where Emily and I had found ourselves alone. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of coffee from a nearby cafe, mingling with the subtle warmth of the early sun. The sky stretched endlessly above, painting a canvas of soft pinks and oranges that seemed to demand quiet reflection. Emily leaned against the railing, her profile framed by the gentle light. There was a calmness about her now, a quiet strength tempered by vulnerability, as if the whispered confession from the night before had settled between us and shifted something fundamental. I stood close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her side without intruding, acutely aware of the tension that had lingered for hours, now softened into something more deliberate, more human. We began to talk carefully, honestly. She admitted that her words the night before had been impulsive, a mixture of longing and curiosity, and she wanted me to know she understood the boundaries we both needed to respect. Her voice was soft, tinged with an honesty that made it impossible not to listen. I found myself opening up too, speaking of my own confusion, the way my feelings had grown unexpectedly, and how difficult it had been to navigate the magnetic pull I felt toward her while maintaining respect for my girlfriend. There was a pause, a silence thick with unspoken understanding, and then she reached out lightly, resting her hand near mine on the railing. The contact was deliberate yet gentle, grounding in its simplicity. I could feel the quiet steadiness of her touch, a reminder that connection didn't always require words, gestures, or confessions. Sometimes it existed in the shared space, in the warmth of someone beside you. The tension between desire and responsibility had not vanished, but it had softened into mutual understanding. We allowed ourselves a few small touches, a brief brush of fingers, the light press of her palm against mine, the subtle closeness of leaning slightly toward each other. Each gesture was charged, yet entirely appropriate, filled with affection and care rather than impulse. It was a slow, deliberate dance of proximity and restraint, a way of acknowledging our connection without crossing the boundaries we both knew were important. We talked about life, about dreams, about the quiet moments that often go unnoticed. There was laughter, too, soft, genuine laughter that bridged the gap between attraction and friendship, tension and ease. The conversation meandered, but every word, every glance, carried the weight of shared understanding. The intimacy between us felt real, grounded, and deeply human. As the sun rose higher, spilling warmth over the city, Emily leaned her head lightly on my shoulder. It was a fleeting moment, gentle and tender, and I felt the steady rhythm of her breathing against me. No words were necessary. The closeness itself spoke volumes. In that suspended, sunlit moment, we had found a balance, a way to acknowledge our feelings, share a quiet intimacy, and remain anchored in respect and care. Emotional goal: transition from forbidden tension to emotional clarity. Show that connection and desire can coexist with respect and honesty. The audience experiences warmth, resolution, and the quiet satisfaction of slow-burn romance without needing explicit content. By mid-morning, the apartment was filled with the comforting buzz of a family brunch. Sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the gentle dust motes in the air and casting a warm glow over the scene. The table was set with fresh fruit, pastries, and the rich aroma of coffee, small, everyday details that somehow felt more significant now, after the tension and quiet confessions of the past day. I sat between my girlfriend and Emily, the air light with casual chatter. Laughter bubbled easily from the three of us, yet beneath it lay a subtle thread of awareness, the connection that had grown between Emily and me over the past day. It was a quiet, unspoken understanding that didn't need to disrupt the harmony of the moment. The way she occasionally caught my eye, the brief, knowing smile, or the gentle brush of her hand when reaching for a dish, spoke volumes without needing words. Emily leaned slightly toward me as she passed the coffee, her shoulder just brushing mine. It was brief, accidental in appearance, yet the warmth of her touch lingered, leaving a small, quiet echo of intimacy. I noticed it, smiled subtly, and felt a familiar flutter, the thrill of connection tempered by care and respect. These gestures, though small, carried the weight of everything that had passed between us, the unspoken attraction, the shared vulnerability, the honesty of our feelings. The conversation shifted naturally. My girlfriend shared a story from work, her voice bright and animated, and I laughed with her, fully present. I noticed Emily leaning in slightly to hear better, her expression soft and attentive. There was no awkwardness, no lingering guilt, only a gentle understanding that relationships, like these, could be complex yet warm. We were navigating new emotions without breaking the bonds of trust or respect. At one point, Emily rested her hand lightly on the back of my chair, a fleeting gesture of comfort and connection. I caught her gaze briefly, and she smiled, a quiet reassurance that everything between us was understood. There was no rush, no insistence, just a slow, steady recognition of affection, the kind that didn't demand words or actions beyond presence. I realized then how much these small moments mattered: the warmth of sunlight on our skin, the soft clinking of cutlery, the gentle rhythm of conversation punctuated by quiet touches. As the meal wound down, we lingered over coffee, savoring the comfort of shared space and unspoken understanding. Emily's hand brushed mine one last time, gentle and reassuring, before she leaned back to speak with my girlfriend. I felt the quiet steadiness of our bond, the intimacy that had grown in small, careful steps, and the knowledge that it could exist without complicating what mattered most. When we finally cleared the table, the apartment felt warmer somehow, infused with laughter, sunlight, and the lingering closeness of three people connected in unexpected ways. There was no confusion, no unresolved tension, only a deep, human understanding and the quiet satisfaction of relationships that had grown, gently and respectfully, into something meaningful. Emotional goal: provide a warm, fulfilling resolution where connections are acknowledged and respected. Highlight subtle intimacy, deep emotional bonds, and lingering affection. The audience leaves with a sense of closure, emotional warmth, and the satisfaction of a slow burn romance handled with care and nuance. If you enjoyed this slow burn, Forbidden Attraction romance, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Comment below, would you have stayed in that rooftop moment, or stepped back like he did? I'd love to hear your thoughts.